Welcome back to another episode of the Self-Care Revolution podcast. Okay, yes, we are, I guess you could say we're on location because we're in the middle of running our errands for next week. Okay, now, like I said, welcome back to another episode of the Self-Care Revolution podcast. My name is Demita. I'm your host, and what we do is we try to make simple daily acts of self-care in our life a regular thing. Okay, now I have to start out by saying we have about 60 something days left in 2025, so y'all know what I'm about to say. Okay, there's no reason why you can't be starting to work on something now. All right, work on drinking more water, replacing one meal a day with something healthier than you normally would get. Try to go to sleep maybe like 20-30 minutes early, maybe 1 or 2 days out of the week, but you have to start small. Okay, so the point is you're going to string together a bunch of consistent habits along, and you're going to look up and be like, wow, I've changed a lot. So that's the whole point. But my point is we're not waiting for New Year's resolutions. We're not waiting for anything. We're not waiting for New Year's resolutions. We're starting now. That's the whole point. We have 60 something days. So there's no excuses. By the time people are starting to write out their New Year's resolutions at the end of the year, we are going to be switching lanes. All right, that's how I like to say. So what we're doing in October, the month of October, we're wrapping up this 4-part series. All right, because you remember in September we spent every day just kind of noticing what our self-care needs are. And so this month in October, we've been focusing on the 4 different types of foundational self-care, which is mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional. Now, we are on emotional this week. All right. Now, I know a lot of people like to ignore their emotions, but your emotions are like the weather outside, right? If you think of the whole thing as a garden and your mind is the soil and your body is the plants and your spirit is the atmosphere, your emotions are the weather, all right? Now, the weather can change from day to day, but you can prepare for it. If you know it's going to be stormy, you can take an umbrella. If you know it's going to be cold, you can take a jacket. If you know it's going to be hot, you can not take a jacket. That's what we mean by checking your emotions, all right? Because if your emotions are all over the place, then, I mean, what are you doing to your garden, all right? So we're wrapping up the 4 pillars of self-care. And like I said, this week we're talking about emotional self-care, which is the part that most people skip. When people be like, hey, how you doing? You automatically say fine when you haven't even really thought and processed the question. You know, maybe you don't want to tell people your real answer, but you really need to say those things to yourself, right? Admit those things to yourself. You have to feel your feelings before you can fix them. And we spend a lot of time ignoring it. So that is why we're paying attention to emotional self-care this week. All right. And if you missed the other episodes, go back and go to selfcaremattersdaily.com and you can find all of the old episodes there. Like I said, we talked about physical, mental, and spiritual so far, and this week we are on emotional. All right, and I like to start out with the tip before we do our self-care roll call. All right, the tip is that you cannot heal what you're not focused on. All right, so if you never pay attention to it, then you're not changing anything. It is just still there on the back burner waiting to snap. Did y'all see that movie Straw? Now, Straw was extreme. All right, there's so many things that happened back to back to that lady. But there are people out there going through things similar, okay? But the way that we address our self-care needs on a daily basis, if we're doing that, then we're least likely to have a moment where we will snap, all right? So it's really just about acknowledging your feelings, how you feel, not avoiding them, all right? Stop avoiding them, all right? So now we're going to do the self-care roll call, all right? And y'all already know how it goes. Have you hydrated, okay? Have you eaten some real food this week, all right? How is your rest looking? Have you stopped to like pray, pause, and reflect? Have you checked on yourself before you're checking with anybody else? And have you moved your body, all right? There's no excuse, all right? There's no excuse. So get down below and let me know if you've actually, how many things you hit in the self-care roll call. Because our goal over here is to touch on our self-care daily. It's not an option. It's just the thing that we have to do. It's like brushing your teeth. Like you wouldn't dare not brush your teeth, but only on Sundays. You would not do that. You would brush your teeth every day, okay? So that's the whole point. Now, like I said, we're going to get back into the garden analogy. If your mind is the soil Your body is the plants, the atmosphere is your spirit, and the weather is your emotions. All right. If you never check the weather, you out here looking crazy, wearing shorts in the wintertime, getting caught in the storm when it rains, all types of things. All right. You need to be checking your inner weather daily. All right. Now, the atmosphere and spirit might seem the same, but it's not, because the overall climate is the atmosphere, right? That is like, it is wintertime or it is summertime or whatever, right? But the day-to-day conditions are your emotions. All right. That's how we are going to look at that from now on. So like, the whole point of this and all of these episodes is tend to your garden daily. And your needs are going to be different based on whoever you are, right? Your life is different than Keisha's life. My life is different than Tom's life. You have to check to see what you need, right? And like, I recommend journaling. Like I said, journaling is one of those self-care actions that kind of overlap into multiple foundational pillars of self-care. It could be mental, right? It could help you mentally. It could help you spiritually. It could help you emotionally, for sure, because you're writing down your feelings and you're, recognizing it. Maybe you're writing down your prayer. Maybe you're talking it out. You know what I'm saying? These are all things that you do to tend to your emotional self-care. When you name what it is that you're feeling, then you take away the power. So I'm feeling angry, or that made me feel sad, or that made me feel this way. Acknowledge it, feel it, and then you can fix it. But if you ignore it, you're not doing anything to it. It's just going to still be there and you haven't addressed it. All right. So, some of the times what we do is we neglect our emotions by avoiding them, thinking they're going to go away, right? Or maybe it looks like, for you, it looks like you're scrolling when you should be sleeping. Like, why are you denying yourself sleep to just scroll? Mindless scrolling, okay, instead of sleeping. Maybe you're numb, but you're busy as hell and you're not processing any of your feelings. Okay, that's another one. You might be drained after you are around a lot of people. Like, how are you feeling, right? You probably didn't even want to go to that event, all right? You might be one of those people who also snap on people who didn't really deserve it. And that's another indicator that you're neglecting your emotional self-care, all right? Now, I always say, feel it, but don't fester there. Like, don't pitch a tent at the place where you're not feeling good. Like, don't move in, right? Feel it, acknowledge it, decide how you're gonna move past it, and move past it. All right. It doesn't have to be deep therapy sessions all day. It's just really just acknowledging instead of avoiding. All right. So I want you to try this. All right. I have to write this down so I can make sure I gave you the right points of what to do, because I always say you need to name the feeling. But if you are not a person who is into journaling and things like that, I implore you to start by writing your feelings in a journal. All right. You can also take walks. You can cry. Cry is also a great release. Don't sleep on crying. All right. Praying is also something as well. And don't be scared to talk to somebody. You never know who can relate. If you have a trusted person that you talk to, or a therapist, but you can actually tend to your emotional self-care daily without therapy sessions being the only thing that you're doing. Because even if you do therapy sessions, you're going to have to put in some type of practice where you acknowledge your feelings on a daily basis so that you can process them. All right. Point blank, period. All right. So y'all already know I like to end these episodes with a challenge for you for next week. Something that you can work on right now. Something that you can put into practice. All right. When something annoys you or hurts you or makes you angry, I want you to pause and ask yourself what really irritates you about it. What really made you mad? What is it really about? And listen for the real answers, because usually, even like, let's take offending somebody being offended, for instance, right? 9 times out of 10, if you're offended by something, is something else up under that offense that has nothing to do with that person. All right. It depends on what the offense is. That's why I said 9 times out of 10. But sometimes when we're offended by people, those people aren't even really thinking about us. So they didn't intend to offend us, but you were offended somehow. Why? It's because something in here. Okay. It's not that person. It is something within you, 9 times out of 10. All right. So I want you to also, along with being, asking yourself that question, what is it really about? I want you to write one honest thing in your journal instead of letting it spiral in your brain. All right. Because, a lot of times we will just go off with that thought that isn't even true. And now we're spiraling and we're reacting to something that isn't even real. So just understand that your emotions are information. All right, they're not instructions. It's not telling you what you should do. It's information of how you're feeling so you can pick the right thing to do. All right, like the weather, it's the temperature. All right, it's powerful, but it's temporary. Okay, it can be hot in the summertime, but it's not going to last forever. All right, so anyway, I'm your girl Demita. Make sure you visit selfcaremattersdaily.com and grab your free tracker. And if you're ready to do more intentional work, to ask yourself questions, because you really got to sit down with yourself and ask yourself questions so that you can get the blueprint on what you need to work on, because nobody else can tell you but you. There's also the You Are the Proof journal for that. All right, that has those reflective questions that you can really sit down and answer and come up with what you need to address immediately. All right, so I'm going to see y'all next week for another reset, and also be on the lookout for next week's midweek check-in. All right, we got less than 70 days left in 2025, so I expect y'all to be doing some small shifts that are going to make some small things that are going to make big shifts at the end of the year. Okay, I'm your girl Demita. I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.